I'm going to show how to make this sort of fractal Voronoi noise using Affinity Photo's procedural texture filter. I came across this texture effect on the internet, and I guess it's part of Blender now, but I thought it would be pretty easy to implement this in the procedural texture filter. The main idea is it's sort of like Perlin noise, where in Perlin noise you take just random numbers and smooth them out with an interpolation function, and then add on higher frequencies on top of it, and then multiply each higher frequency by this scaling factor that makes it smaller every time you add it. And so this is sort of similar. So I'm going to show how to do this in the procedural texture filter. We're going to start with a new document. I'll choose XGA, 1024. We'll change this to 1024 pixels. Make sure it's in RGB8 mode. Create that. I'm going to fill that with black and choose the Move tool, and then choose the Live Procedural Texture Filter. Add that one. And then I'm going to add a single equation, assign it to the 3 color channels, and I'll add a custom real number input A. I'll label that one scale. Set it equal to 4 to get started. And then I'm going to add a 0 to 1 slider. I'm going to call it S and label it smooth. And that will be like the smoothing factor in Perlin noise. I'll start off with it down at about 50%. I'm going to start with a variable called v, and that will be my coordinate system. It will be a 2-element vector consisting of relative x and relative y pixel coordinates on the screen, and then times my scaling factor a, and dividing by the width of the document in pixels, w. And so that looks like that. Then I'm going to use cellnoise, and the cellnoise function requires that the x and y components are listed separately, so I will do that with v.x and v.y. And then I'll just put a 1 in here, and so that looks like that. And just to show what this 1 is doing, if I replace that with I and add a 0 to 1 I slider, let's call it I can put this at 0, and I just have a square array, and then these move off in random directions, and then it applies this, checks the distance to each other point on here. Alright, so I'm going to delete my I variable and change this back to 1. I don't want to use that. Now for this effect, I'm going to make multiple copies of this cellnoise. So I'm going to copy that and then add it on right over here. And I'm going to double the size on the coordinates. So I'll take 2 times that one and 2 times that one. And then but I want to make this smaller by a fraction, and so I'm going to multiply my smoothing factor S. And then I also don't want this to line up right at 0, so I don't want them to sort of stack in the same place. So I'm going to offset this one, and I'm just going to add A to this. So now they won't be stacking up in the same spot. Alright, so that's the basic pattern, and so I'm going to copy this and add it on again. So I'll just paste it there. I'll multiply it by s squared this time, and then I'll multiply these by 4, and then to prevent stacking, I'll just add a to the y component this time. And then I'm going to do this a couple more times. This time it's s cubed. It's 8, and I guess I'll take minus a this time on the x component, and then one more. I guess I'll add one more, so that will be, see, basically 5 octaves. So s times, so we got s to the 4th power, And now this one is 2 to the 4th power, which is 16, and this is 16. Now I can't have iteration, so I have to just do this manually, add them all up like this. Now if you could iterate, you could do this, write a little subroutine that does this a lot better, but that's what it looks like. Now I'd like to be able to scale this because it's getting washed out in certain areas. All of these numbers are positive, and so they're just accumulating. So I'm going to make this into a variable called variable t1 and set it equal to all of that. And then I'm going to do a FMA function, a multiply and add function. I'll take my t1 and I'll multiply it by a fader I1 and add an offset O1. Now I'm going to add -1 to 1 sliders, I1 and O1, and I'll call this one the fader and this one the offset. Okay, so now I'm going to bring up the fader. I can see sort of the webby pattern like that, and then I can adjust the offset either positive or negative. Now I can also switch this around, so if I make that one negative and bring this one up, I can see it looks sort of bubbly. So this looks sort of maybe like foliage or clouds, and I know in rendering they sometimes use this as a cloud effect. But I sort of like this one better where it has this webby effect. And the last thing I'll do is just add a gradient map to this, and I'll just do the default, but I'll make this one black. This one I think I'll just do, if I wanted foliage I could do green, but I'm going to make it red. And then this one I'll make sort of a yellow. And maybe grab another one off of there, and then I could lighten this up a little. And you can mess around with that and create some effects. You can also go back, let's see, I'll drag this down on top of this layer, and then I could also go in and tweak the procedural texture filter. So if I bring this all the way over, I'm going to set this back down to 0. It looks mostly like the small cell noise pattern. If I bring it all the way over here and bring this one up, looks like the large cell noise pattern. So it's just in between here where you get this sort of blend of the two, and I think it looks the most interesting for this type of pattern. Now I also did this with, I thought another one that looked good was my dragon scale pattern, where I have this sort of other pattern. So that's what I used when I made this background. All right, well I think this has a lot of potential. You could try it with some of the other cell noise functions and see what you come up with for those. And I think it could be useful in making a lot of different natural procedural textures, like maybe moss or lichens or foliage or something like that. Anyway, if you come up with something cool, let me know. And if you have any comments or questions, just let me know about that too. Thanks for watching.